Okay. All right, we'll just go around the groups. We'll get you to turn around. We just want to get a couple of key distinctions. All right, microphones to someone that's holding a hand up. Over here.
And was the most important thing was where to hold that photo in front of them.
Where to hold the photo, that ultimate buying signal.
Can I make an additional point on that? You know, sometimes when you do things like that, people look at you kind of funny and say, well, I can't do that. Here's the response. Well, if you could do that, where would it be? Right? Because a lot of times you just have to kind of get past the patterns that people have of their current thinking. And if you just say, well, if you could, because you're not really asking them to do it, in many cases they end up doing it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because what that does, it tricks and bypasses the conscious mind and goes straight to the unconscious. So you say, yeah, I know you couldn't, but if you did, what would it be? And they make the picture then. Right? So. Good. Somebody else? We'll get you stand up, please.
If I can add on to that, if that's okay with you, Spike. What I say is, I know you don't know, but if you did know, what would it be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. All right, other key distinctions that you've had over the lunch break or things that you may have a question?
I love your line. Feed a fish what a fish wants to eat. I love that. That's gold.
Well, it's not original. A friend of mine actually shared with me about 10 years ago, and I never forgot it. Yeah.
Good. Other distinctions before we... Anyone? Going?
Thought there was going to be a race.
The key distinction for me was the value and significance of trust. In a particular area of one of the industries I'm in, it involves people making a financial commitment to an overseas location. Mm-hmm. And I find that there's a massive trust gap to be able to make that commitment. So I'm really keen to develop perspectives on the best way to develop that trust, and I think one of the best ways will be using a questionnaire, which is what you've been talking about, because it takes you more into their mindset and then it gives an opportunity to build a bridge.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great point.
Absolutely, good point.
Other distinctions?
Lady at the back.
Now we do have a race.
Yeah, I really liked your ask, question, and listen. I think that can be applied in all areas of our life, and with our kids.
Yep.
I think asking question is easy, but the listening part is probably the hardest because often we're too busy thinking what we're going to say next rather than listening to it.
Yeah, it is. It's a great point. I'll make a comment that kind of bridges what Darren was talking about and what I was sharing together, and that is rapport is such an important part of asking questions, and asking questions is such an important part of rapport that you really can't separate the two, because there's a fine line between inquisitiveness and interrogation, right? And the difference is rapport. If you don't have rapport with somebody, you start asking a bunch of questions, that's an interrogation. If you have rapport with someone, you can ask a lot of questions that might otherwise be sensitive or personal, but yet because you're in rapport and alignment with the person, they're willing to share that. Two things when it comes to asking questions are important to keep in mind. Number one, don't start off with the most sensitive, probative questions first. Seriously, I mean, and some people do. It's like, how much profit does your company make? Well, this is a stranger off the street. It's none of your business. Now, if you're asking questions and you're kind of layering it, you can ask it in such a way that, number one, it becomes appropriate in terms of timing, but also you can say, well, I would imagine a business like this probably has profit margin of somewhere between 20 and 30%. Is that correct? People are pretty comfortable in giving you generalities, but even if you ask that question first right out of the gate, they may not be willing to share that. The second thing is that when you're asking the questions, if you're not sure if it's appropriate for you to ask the question, do two things. Number one, ask permission. Would it be okay if I ask you this? And here's the reason why. You want to give them the reason why, okay? Because it's not then you're just trying to solicit information or trying to extract information from them. You're not interrogating them. You're doing it on behalf of their best interest, on behalf of the potential relationship that you're cultivating with the people. So if you're not sure, ask. Ask permission to ask the question before you ask it.
Yeah, and you just simply say, would it be okay if if I asked you a few questions so that it can help me get some clarity about where you're at, so that I can best see how I can either give you some ideas or support in this meeting or whatever. It's an easy thing. The other reason you ask questions, what you're doing is helping that person get clarity. because 99% of the planet don't have, remember, rapport at the unconscious level themselves. Who here in the room, for a start, has ever procrastinated about something? Okay. Who's unsure?
There's still some people that are putting it off.
Now, we've all done it. And what that is when you're procrastinating continuously about something, it means that you are out of rapport at the unconscious level, or you've got two parts at the unconscious level in conflict. And what you want to do is, by you as using the techniques we're talking about, asking questions, help bridge that gap. Because what it does is it chunks them down so that they start to get some clarity about what it is that they really want or what they need as far as your services or product goes, and it brings those two together. And if you can do that, then you'll get those parts that are in conflict or uncertainty into rapport at the unconscious level, and all of a sudden things start to flow much easier in your relationship with them. So that's a key point, by asking questions. It helps that person get clarity. Because they may be, they come in with a general view of what they want or whatever, and it's not until you start asking those questions, they go, oh yeah, gee, I never thought about that. I really do need if I'm looking at a car with a bigger boot because I've got twins, so I really need to be able to make sure the pusher fits in the boot of the car. Yeah, great question from that salesperson.
It really is, and I'll share something else with you. I've seen it, and it's kind of comical when you see someone do it. Sometimes when people just ask questions and they don't really give, they're going, and kind of write down, let me ask you another question, It comes across like a therapy session, right? You're like, lay down on the couch and I'll analyze you, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm writing down. So it is important when you're asking questions that from time to time you give some feedback and you give some response in order to keep the rapport. Otherwise, it really does kind of come across as maybe you're making a psychoanalysis of your prospect or the potential partner that you're working with.
Yeah.
Okay, other insights? Okay, well, there's two things that...
All right, we have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you want to say something?
I missed that.
Yeah, I was sharing with the group about just the power of negative thoughts and the thoughts that we have upstairs there. The physical exercise you showed us before, yep. And one of the ladies was just sharing with me about just taking a note every hour around what you're actually thinking, and just trying to track if there's something consistent coming up.
Yep.
You're actually supposed to be doing some work, but yet you're thinking about your family or some negative thought or whatever that's, who knows, causing other impacts on your life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, our thoughts definitely have an impact. I mean, there's actually even a thing out there, it's called organ therapy, whereas people will actually get illnesses in their body and things like that, but part of it's because of the language that they're using. They're saying, oh yeah, everything's such a pain in the neck, and guess what? Where do they get all their stress in their body, or when they're sick? It's all in the neck, right? Because they're actually talking themselves into it, and that's where it shows up in their body. So there's actually a technique and a whole therapy on that. So what you say to yourself is really, really important.
Okay. Other insights?
Okay.
All right, I have a question for the group before I get into the two things that I have here on the board. How many people actually went through the selling and marketing diagnostic last night in detail? I would encourage you to do that, and I realize that for a lot of people you have travel that you do, and to get back and forth here, but it's absolutely critical for your business, because what we're talking about here is turning around your business. And if you go back to the same patterns without analyzing the information that's available to you or asking yourself the tough questions about your business, it's going to be very difficult for you to have the potential or live up to the potential that you have within your business. So it is an absolutely critical document for you to go through. And in many cases, you can't answer all the questions. I mean, there was someone that raised their hand, said they could answer all 30, and that's by far the rarest. In fact, I think that's probably the first person I've ever had raise their hand for that. Second thing that I wanted to do was share with you a comment or a quotation that kind of encapsulates what Darren was talking about this morning. How many people here are either formally trained or fairly familiar with NLP? Okay, about half the people. A lot of what Darren was sharing in terms of the sensory systems comes out of the field of NLP, and it actually comes from other fields, but was adopted in NLP and kind of conveyed through that. And that came about in, I guess, the early 70s, right?
Yeah.
Most of it. But I'm going to read a quote from a guy named David Ogilvy, who was a Madison Avenue advertising person back in the 50s and 60s. And this is at the height of broadcast advertising on television and billboards and magazines, radio, and that type of stuff, when people really started using electronic media to advertise their product. And the quotation is this: if you're trying to persuade people to do something or buy something, it seems to me you should use their language, the language in which they think. Make sense? I mean, it's kind of a profound but simple thought. But at the same time, I mean, what Darren was talking about here is what people in advertising have been using for years to get the attention and the attraction or the appeal of people to associate with their products. So as you go back and you start thinking about your marketplace, you start thinking about the people that you're trying to engage or the people that you're trying to create relationships with, think about it in terms of how they think. Put the language in the form in which they share their language. Put it in the sensory system in which they operate. There's a really, really important concept, and some of you probably have seen it, and you might have gathered some of it from yesterday. Who in the room is familiar with the concept of lifetime value of a client? Okay, most people. We're going to go through this quickly because as we get into the concept of testing and as Brett gets into copywriting, and as you get in really to the things that we're looking at with joint ventures and strategic marketing, it's absolutely vital that you understand when a new client comes into your business, what do they mean over time? If someone comes in and they do business with you once every 4 weeks and they spend $100 and you have a $30 profit margin and you don't know how long that person continues to buy, you don't know what the lifetime value of that client is. And if you don't know the lifetime value of that client, you don't know what you can afford to invest in that relationship up front. Right? You could be spending lots and lots of money and getting a lot of clients in and losing money on the back end. Or you could be holding your business back by not investing enough to attract clients because you don't know how long they're going to continue to buy or what the value of that relationship is going to be. Darren has a great example that he shares about
lifetime value?
Yeah.
Well, I was just, we were talking before about, well, if you're a hairdressing salon, most people go and get their hair cut, every, say, 6 weeks, or is it longer? 6 weeks, 8 weeks? What would you say? 6 weeks? Every 6 weeks. So how many times is that a year? So how many times do you go in a year? Who's quick at maths? 8. 9? We've got 8, 9. All right, we'll say it's 9 times.
8.5. They get one side of the haircut.
Okay, let's say that they go 9 times a year, and the average spend for a lady getting the hair done is probably, they might spend $100. Is that fair? Or can we go up or a little bit down? So let's say it's $100. So they go in 9 times a year. How many people have had the same hairdresser for at least, say, 2 years? Yeah, a number of you. Or 3 years? Right? It's at least 2 or 3 years is probably the average that you stay with the same hairdresser if they're doing a good job, etc. with your hair. So that's, what was it before? We said, so $900 a year times 3 nines is 27. So, that person or that client for you from a lifetime value proposition is worth $2,700. So how much would you be willing to invest up front to get a new client? Right, if that client's worth $2,700 to you. And my example was if I owned a hairdressing salon and I knew that was my lifetime value of what people would spend, when they first came into the store and it's a new customer, I would invest the full $100 or something back into that customer. So, when they walked out, imagine how you'd feel, ladies, is if you went into the hairdressers, had your hair done at this new hairdressing salon, and then when you walked out, they gave you a big bouquet of flowers, box of chocolates, a couple of movie tickets to go to the movies, and a bottle of champagne, and said, thank you very much. How would that make you feel? You'd be pretty special. How many people would you go and tell about, wow, I just went to this new hairdressing salon? How many people? Now, if you went and told 5 people about that and referred 5 people, what's that worth now to me? Another 5 people at $2,700. All right? So the lifetime value, you need to look at that. It's such an important distinction in your business. Don't be scared to give away something up front or to really make an impression on your customers. Go out of your way for customer service. Create a magic moment for your customer. All right, so they are raving fans because the amount of referrals that they give you, it's a huge multiple effect. All right, so you want to add something to that, Spike?
No, I'll go through the mechanics for those of you who don't know how you calculate lifetime value. And Darren gave you an example, but there's also a very important component of that, and that's your profit margin. Yesterday we talked about the primary ways, the three primary ways to grow a business, and then I gave you the other two. But let's just go back to the model of the 3 ways to grow a business, right? Which is 1, you focus on getting more clients. 2, you get them to buy more. 3, you get them to buy more often. Most people focus most of their time on trying to increase the number of clients. If you can increase the frequency in which people buy, or if you can increase the size of transaction, or if you can increase the length of transaction, in many cases you can increase the profits much more effectively than going out and trying to find more clients. But let's just say, for sake of example, using Darren's model there, that if you can increase the number of clients, you can increase your business. But you don't know how much you can invest in going out and acquiring one of those clients, right? If you don't measure lifetime value, if you don't know what that client's worth, you don't know how much you can afford to spend to get them. So here's how you do it. Number 1, if you know that every time you add one more client, on average, they enter into a $100 transaction. And you know that over the course of the year, they're going to buy from you 9 times. Okay? That's $900 in revenue. Okay? If you don't know the margin, you don't know how much you can invest. Because if you have a 1% margin, you got $9 to work with in terms of acquisition. If you got a 90% margin, you have a lot of margin or a lot of profit that you can invest to get people to come in the door. But the key is making sure that you understand exactly what a customer means to you, because then you know what you can afford to invest up front. Because in some cases, you can even afford to take a loss on the transaction if you know that person's going to buy 10 times, and you know that they're going to buy on average 12 months or 18 months or 24 months. We also talked about the other 2 ways yesterday of how to grow the business, that you get people to buy longer. That enhances the lifetime value of the client, because instead of buying for 12 months, they may be buying for 18 months. And if there's something that you can put in there that continues the service, that continues the value creation, that enhances the value relationship that you have with someone, allows them to buy from you longer, in many cases you're going to be better off and better served than going out and getting more clients. One of the oddest things that I see, odd as in curious odd, is that someone who has a poor product or poor service tries to market their way out of it, right? And what they do is that they keep spending more money trying to get more people, because they're not servicing the people that they're getting, and they're bringing someone in the back door or bringing someone in the front door, and they're pushing someone out the back door. Right? And essentially what they're doing is spending more money to look bad to more people. They really are. And to me, it's like the silliest thing in the world. If they took some of that time and some of that energy and some of that money that they're spending on going out there trying to attract a new client because they pissed off the last client, and put some of that into service, put some of that into quality, put some of that into follow-up, put some of that into enhanced value creation for the people that they have already, they could keep this number the same and still be further ahead. But if you know what each client means to you, you know where to put your money, you know where to put your time, you know where to put your resources, and you know what reasonably to expect in terms of the impact of your business. Make sense?
How many people, and just think about this comment for a moment, how much more would you have as far as clients if you go back for the last 5 years, and every client that you don't have now that's either left your business or hasn't bought off you again but bought off you once, if you still had them as a regular customer, how much more would that add to your business? You think about that. Yeah. Think of how many customers you don't have now that were once in your business, that bought once but now you don't have them. Yeah. It'll be huge.
When I was doing actual turnarounds where I'd go in and work with a business, there were probably 10 or 12 factors that most turnaround consultants will tell you that you focus on. But there were a couple that I focused on that a lot of people didn't. One was stopping client attrition, because in many cases you've already invested a lot of money and a lot of time trying to get that person to become a client, and if you're losing them, it's money down the drain. So if you can stop people from leaving, that's certainly an opportunity. But just exactly what Darren was saying, if there were people that were in the database that were buying, that had stopped buying for whatever the reason, if we could identify what those reasons were, the 80-20 rule, 80% of the people stop buying from you for 20% of the reasons, and if you could fix those 20% of the reasons why people stop buying and get them re-engaged in that relationship, it's found money. It's found money. I love quotes, and I shared this with you yesterday, but I'm going to give you another quote that kind of sums this up. And this is from a guy I don't know. I came across it. I collect quotes. The quote is, in marketing, I've seen only one strategy that can't miss. Hopefully you've seen more than one since we've been here. And that is that you market to your best customers first, your best prospects second, and the rest of the world last. Okay? He's talking about marketing internally to the people that are already doing business with you, people that you already have the trust of. I mean, think about how much easier it is to get someone to believe and to sincerely trust you when you put out an ad or you put out a communication or you offer them a product or service if they've already done business with you for 2 years as opposed to the fact that they've never heard of you. Okay? Huge opportunity. Last thing, is there anything else you want to share on lifetime value? Last thing that I want to talk about before we bring Brett up here in just a moment is the concept of testing. There are so many elements of marketing, and I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're David Ogilvy or Jay Abraham or some of the giants in marketing. There really is no genius in marketing other than the marketing place. And I learned that from another friend of mine, Alex Mondosian, talks about that. And the way you find out the genius of the market is that you test. Right? You test the headlines, you test the banners, you test the location, you test the message, you test the copy, you test the proposition, you test the risk reversal. All of the factors that go into creating a relationship or creating a transaction between you and your marketplace or you and your clients is an opportunity to test. And it could be as simple as the greeting that people put when they answer the phone. Okay? I love greetings when you call a phone. You call somebody up and they say, so-and-so, right? That's a whole different proposition than if you call someone and they say, hello, this is so-and-so, how can we help your business? Right? What's the presupposition in that? That they can, that they're willing, that they're interested, right? It's a whole different positioning and proposition. And it's just a small element, and it's just one of the elements in your business that you can test. And it is a marketing position when someone calls your business and they connect with someone. I talked yesterday about don't call the person that greets people that come into your door, the receptionist, call them the director of first impressions. Right? In some cases, you might have to test the greeting that they have when people walk up. You might have to test people. Maybe the person that you have is not the right person. Maybe they're not willing to do that. Darren was singing Mary Had a Little Lamb this morning with a scowl on his face, and someone walks in and says, glad you're here. There's a big disconnect there. So as Brett is sharing with you a lot of the elements of copywriting and a lot of the elements of marketing, think about from a test standpoint what you could be testing in your business, what you could be testing in your advertising, what you could be testing in your marketing. It could be something as simple, and we're going to talk about referral systems tomorrow, it could be something as simple as testing the incentive or the positioning of a referral system that you have for people to generate referrals for you. There's another element in lifetime value of a client, and that is this. If you know that for every client that comes in, on average, if you bring in 10 clients, if you know that on average those 10 clients are going to bring in 2 referrals, guess what? Lifetime value of your client just increases because those 2 clients now become part of this equation.
Okay, now we're going to obviously bring up Brett Thompson in a moment, and he's one of Australia's leading copywriters. He does work for me and Spike. He does work for people like Mal Emery in Australia, Daryl and Andrew Grant, many other speakers he does a lot of their copy and work for. It is a real art form and a skill, and you need to at least understand copywriting and have an understanding of it so that even if you don't do it yourself, you can outsource it to somebody like him to be done. Because it's a critical component that helps make a compelling story for people to come to your business. All right, so it's a real art form, and so we're going to share some valuable tips about that. As a matter of fact, if you sell things on eBay, one of the ways that makes your eBay products much more effective to sell is by the copywriting that you would use in that. All right, so, but it's certainly important to every business is to understand copywriting for any of your brochures, your marketing letters, and it can have a huge impact.